Well, it's been 9 months since the general election of May 2024. 9 whole months have elapsed. And most of that we have been governed by the Government of National Unity. I thought it would be time to have a look at who have been the political winners and losers of the last 9 months. So let's have a look at the political parties, how their fortunes have fared over the last 9 months, the Government of National Unity and what that has brought. So let's start off with the big dog, Mr. 40%, the African National Congress. Our leaders for 30 years, 31 now, the party that's large and in charge. So they formed the Government of National Unity, and those for 8 months, the Government of National Unity is characterized by the ANC doing everything that they know that their partners in the GNU would hate. They passed the Bella Act, they passed the Expropriation Act, they do a dirty in Gauteng, they do a dirty in most of the metros, especially up here in Gauteng. And President Cyril Ramaphosa is bestriding the stage like a colossus. It looks like the ANC have managed to govern the country without winning, and all windows are facing the sea. It looks so good for the ANC. But they forgot. They forgot that there were going to be some issues where they're going to need the support of their GNU partners. And along comes the budget and the budget vote. What happens? Before they even get to a budget vote, the finance minister gets stopped from presenting his budget to Parliament, something unheard of in the history of any serious country. But he doesn't even deliver his budget because he gets told that his partners in the Government of National Unity are quite simply not going to support the budget. This action was always going to come. It was going to come because it was the last chance saloon for the Government of National Unity partners who have been treated like dirt by the ANC from the get-go. So they needed to lay down a marker. Surprise, surprise, they get the early Christmas present when they find out that the finance minister intends to increase the VAT rate from 15 to 17%, 2 whole percentage points, which, as you know, is a tax more on the poor than on everybody else, and it's going to be political dynamite. And they use that as the reason to tell the ANC that they're not going to support the budget. Obviously, the ANC gets caught completely flat-footed. And what do? They say, no, don't worry, we were also going to vote against our own budget. Do they take us for fools? Why on earth would they even bother saying that? I mean, really, the level to which they treat us like children is incredible. But the point is, though, clearly the president and the other people in the senior echelons of the ANC knew about the VAT increase. But they're trying to save face. Having outmaneuvered those parties, suddenly life got real and the GNU got real for the ANC. They understand that from now on, everything they have to do, they better find consensus with their GNU partners. So the ANC were doing great out of the new post-2024 election. They were doing great. They got more than what they bargained on. But suddenly life has got very real for the ANC. What do they do about the budget when it happens in March? Well, they've got some horrible choices to make. And the biggest choice, the only choice that they can make is to cut expenditure, as we've discussed on the show before. And that is going to be politically unpopular because the ANC only has their support because of large S. Suddenly, the till is slammed shut. They're not going to be able to give their comrades the money that they are used to. They can't borrow more money. They can't do the easy things like raise VAT. They'll probably raise income tax and corporate tax by a small percent just to make it look like they're punishing everybody. But the bottom line is, stick around, expenses will have to be cut. As we said in our last update, Doge is coming whether they like it or not. So let's look at the other parties. The Democratic Alliance. Well, the Democratic Alliance came into the Government of National Unity with 21% compared to the ANC's 40%, and they were treated like doormats. Everything that they knew that they had sold to their supporters for reasons that they were joining the GNU was turned into mud because the ANC did whatever they wanted to do anyway, with no regard to the DA. Suddenly, the budget action was a godsend. And oddly enough, their win is made more visible because all of the other GNU parties who had equal objections to the Bella Act and to the Expropriation Act and to all of these other things were happy when everybody was looking at the DA and saying, why didn't you stand up to them? Well, suddenly, all the parties stand up to the ANC, but because everybody has been blaming the DA for not standing up to the ANC, it's the DA that's getting all the credit. So this has been quite a big win for the DA because it's sort of showing that they do have a backbone, which we were starting to wonder ourselves, and that maybe, just maybe, for people that never considered supporting the DA, they've come out as champions of the poor. So this has been a good turn of events for the DA, and it would have been completely opposite before the budget speech. Then you've got parties like the Patriotic Alliance, Freedom Front Plus. Well, as I said, these parties were very, very happy to do two things. They were happy to see the DA taking all the stick for the ANC passing some of those laws that they themselves were opposed to. They sort of, in small letters inside page 3, were saying they're also opposed to Bella Act. They're also opposed to Expropriation Act, but they weren't grabbing the megaphone because they could see that the DA were getting the heat for it, and they saw the opportunity to snare some DA voters, especially in the Western Cape. Well, now, what Mark Pa know? Because suddenly the DA look like an emboldened party, and you know that it's hurt them because they all took to media as hard as they could to say the DA mustn't take credit for this. We were all in it together. I didn't hear them saying that you mustn't blame the DA only for passing the Bella Act and Expropriation Act. We also didn't want it. When it was that side, they were quiet. So they were happy to see the DA bleed, but now that the DA is getting the credit, they've got a bit of a problem. So that was those parties. The IFP, Inkatha Freedom Party, it's a confusing bunch of people, I've got to say. They seem to be just sticking to KZN and KZN issues. They seem to be worrying only about local government and by-elections in the KZN area. You don't really hear from them. It's hard to see where they begin and end. It's hard to see what their alliances are. They were also opposed to the budget, but seem to come out of it with no credit. And I think that before the next election, even the local government election, the IFP is going to need something dynamic to happen or it's going to melt away. There was always the danger is that what are you voting for when you vote for the IFP? MK has out-Zulu'd the IFP. They seem to support all of the ANC's policies. When then they support the DA policies. Well, if you like any of that, you fancy the Zulu vote, you're going to vote for MK. If you fancy the DA story, then vote for the DA. If you fancy the ANC story, then vote for the ANC. IFP seems to me to have a complete and utter identity crisis. And while all of this noise has been floating around over the last couple of days, I don't think anybody's even interviewed anybody from the IFP. So, IFP, who knows? But I don't see them gaining or losing out of this. The other, as I call them, entrepreneurial parties, these are the one-man bands that are only there so that they can get a nice cabinet post, Al Jamar, Good, Rise Mzansi, PAC. They don't really make the news. I know that the Good Party will, whatever their only policy seems to be, to always try and claim that they know everything, but they don't do much. They don't get much out of this. Then I want to take a look at the parties who are outside of the government of national unity, and let's just see how they've fared over the last 9 months, especially with regards to what's happened in the last couple of weeks. There is no doubt that both Mkhonto we Sizwe and the economic freedom fighters were caught napping by the budget action. To make it worse, the budget action was kind of in their remit. It's the thing that they do. They protect the poor. Now, what do you do if the party that's meant to protect white interests is protecting the poor? It doesn't leave you with a lot of wriggle room. Now, we know that both parties have got issues. MK have got serious issues. What do you do when your biggest off-season hire, in this case, their Secretary General Floyd Shivambu, and the party princess, Zuma's daughter, are having a very public spat on social media? They seem to be so busy with this issue to try and resolve it as if this is of national importance, while instead of telling South Africa, no, we're not going to ask for more 2021 style riots. So MK, going to say this again, looking a lot like COPE. Those that remember COPE fighting internal battles when they had become the third biggest party in the country. I don't know if any of this is starting to sound familiar, and eventually just melted away, and in the last election failed to even win a seat. But MK, at some point, if they want to be relevant, they better come back to the table. And what happened last week proved how difficult it is when you're that far away from power. The EFF, Julius Malema probably delivered one of his better speeches in Parliament when he said, this is completely wrong. It's up to the finance minister to deliver his budget, and then it's up to Parliament to vote, even if he gets voted down. But his job isn't to withdraw his speech, withhold his speech. People are waiting for it. It's in the national interest that he does his speech. It was the right speech, but it sounded like it was coming from a very lonely man. Sitting there, there's no other people that are prepared to open their mouths in the EFF, because why would you? There's a good chance you get kicked out of the party. So they are starting to look like a one-man dictatorship. So that's a broad overview of the political parties, how the last 9 months have shaped up, especially after the last week's activities. The question is, has this been good for democracy? Well, I think the only answer to that is hell yes. This is what we hoped for from coalition politics all along, is that people inside the coalition and outside the coalition would hold the government of the day, regardless of which party they come from, accountable. And it worked. This was the best politics we've seen in South Africa in 30 years. So it's going to be very, very interesting. Will this lead to a better country? I can't see it leading to a worse country. So all in all, I'm going to say that I'm pretty happy that it happened. I think it was good for democracy. I think it gives the GNU some life. You're going to hear this for the very first time, I would agree with Julius Malema. I'm getting very concerned that a lot of decisions are being taken outside of Parliament that are parliamentary decisions. But even Parliament's taking decisions that are outside Parliament because they're in a tent in the parking lot. So if you don't want to be in a tent in the parking lot, go and hire a car from Pace Car Rental, and maybe you can start your own Parliament inside your rented car. And I hope that you like and subscribe to the State of the Nation. And why don't you become a member of our community? You can get a lot more content that isn't going to be on the public platforms. And there's a lot of benefits to being a member of our community. But thank you for watching. We'll see you again on the State of the Nation.